Hello, this is Jeff at the Fredericks Sculpture Museum on a very rainy day, and it is International Museum Day today. This is started in 1977, and it's a day when all museums around the world can kind of celebrate the importance that they give to their communities. So what I thought I would do today is give you a little quick tour of something that most of you never get to see. So if you're coming to the museum and you're walking around, and sometimes you probably pass by this door and say, wow, look at those words there that say archives. I wonder what's inside there. Well, you're in luck. We're going to take a quick look at what's inside here, provided that I hope the video stays going good. Hopefully I have a strong enough signal today with all the rain. So let's take a look inside this amazing room. We've got some things laid out that I'm going to talk to you about here in a little bit, but this is a little 360 of what's inside here. We have this big picture of Star Dream from Royal Oak. If this wasn't in here, there is no windows and there's no sense of the outside world. So this is about a 15-foot banner, and it gives us a little bit of a sense of that there is life outside of this four dark walls. So anyway, let's get started. We've got rows and rows of stuff. And so what do we have? Correspondence files. Marshall Fredericks spent about 70 years of his life creating sculpture, and his correspondence with the people that he had come across in his life, met, talked with, wrote to. We've got a lot of that here, and it's all been processed thanks to Melissa Ford, our previous archivist that did so much for this museum. We will always be in debt for the amount of work she did processing all these archives. Project files. Every one of the pieces of Marshall Fredericks sculpture that's ever been created has some type of a project file associated with it. So we'll look at a couple of these a little bit, but we can go into any of these files and say, I wonder what's inside there. Well, this is the letters. Here's C through H, CH, CL, CL. I'm assuming these are a lot of Cleveland War Memorial files that are inside of these boxes. And so you can go through and find out everything you want to know about the sculpture, what it cost to build it, the ideas behind it. Some of these pieces that were fountains, you even got whole schematics for what the fountain system was going to look like. So there's just about anything we could want to find in some of those files. We've got tons and tons of photographs. Let's go behind the next door real quick, and we have film. You can see, when's the last time you've seen an old canister of film like that? We've got quite a few films of Marshall Fredericks, VHS, all kinds of different formats. The bulk of this particular aisle is clippings. I don't know if you can get back and see all of these, but there is probably about 60 boxes of clippings. So these are all articles, things that were written about Marshall Fredericks in his lifetime, newspapers, magazines, all kinds of media before the internet. And it's all compiled here by year, and you can find all kinds of amazing things. These are my favorite files to browse through if I'm looking for an idea for a blog post or just something interesting to put on social media. There's so much cool stuff in there. It's behind door number 3. All kinds of stuff. We've got drawing supplies. We've got boxes of things that came out of the studio. There's, really average things, pencils, pastels. Some of these have sculpting tools in them and things like that that are not necessarily in the studio at this time. So anyway, we've got a lot of this kind of stuff. Here's the desk here. I think of the archives as the brain center of the museum, because this contains all of the stuff that we know of about Marshall Fredericks. It's not necessarily his artwork. We've got some things that I've hung up in here. This is Aretha Franklin at the Spirit of Detroit. I think this is a great image. Spirit of Detroit and the Red Wings. Another Red Wings. All kinds of fun little things in here. These are actually from a video game, these Spirit of Detroit renderings that came from I forget what the name of the video game is, but it's pretty cool. It's put out by Sony. They had called us years ago and said, hey, can we use the image of the Spirit of Detroit for a video game? I thought, wow, that's weird. Can't wait to see how it turns out. So anyway, let's take a look at a few things I pulled to try to give you a tour of some interesting things that are in here. There is a ton of interesting things in here. I cannot, in any possible way, pull out the things that are most interesting in here in a day or two. It would take weeks. There's so many cool things in here. But I'm going to show you a few things that I pulled today, random things, that I think are just as interesting as many of the things in here. So let's start. This first piece is a drawing. It's called India. This was probably done about 1943, 1944, when Marshall Fredericks was in the military. And it's just a beautiful little drawing, frame drawing, on a piece of just kind of brown paper, nothing wonderfully archival. And it's just a great little drawing. I absolutely love this drawing. This is fun. So I got my gloves on here, but Marshall, I don't know if this is supposed to be him or not, but it's got his name on it, and it's some type of advertising for an enamel company in Cleveland, Ohio. So it probably is him at any rate, from whoever might have tried to solicit him their enameling services at the time. You all know that the Spirit of Detroit is extremely popular, and this is a cool old button, just says I like Detroit, probably from the 1970s. Got a nice little smiley face on there, and the Spirit of Detroit. And I think that's the, if you're looking really close, I think that's the old Yellow Pages, let your fingers do the walking symbol. So that's kind of cool. Medals. Marshall, what's one thing that I don't think most people know about Marshall Fredericks is the amount of medallions he made in his lifetime. Tons of medallions. This is one that was done for Dow Chemical. I don't know if you can see that, it's really reflective. Here is another one of the Flying Wild Geese. This was actually one that was done for the university here. This is really cool. This is a small one. This is about the size of a 50-cent piece, but it is Henry Ford. And if you know the sculpture of Henry Ford in the main gallery, this is just a small version of him done as a coin. So Marshall was a member of the big 50-cent word today, the Numismatic Association, which essentially are coin collectors of the world, and he did a lot of these, a lot of different types of medallions for all kinds of things. This is not in any type of alphabetical order or historical order or by year or anything like that. But this is really cool. This is something that most people don't know about Marshall Fredericks. See this guy all dressed up right here in his regalia. He was a member of these social and fraternal organizations that got together, and I think my dad did this back in the 70s. I remember him going away and dressing up kind of like this. Well, this is weird. I found this picture first, and then we have 100 of these things of different pieces of his regalia, and I just happened to pull the right box. So this is actually the medal. I don't know what this one is for. It doesn't have any type of writing on this one, or some of them have little metal plaques on them that tell you exactly what the occasion was that you would have worn this particular medallion. But you can see that there is the brooch piece right here, which is the same that he's wearing in this photograph. The piece that is on this like sash is around his waist right there. There's actually cufflinks, two little cufflinks right there that are worn, all part of this wonderful piece of regalia. But we have probably, and you can see the plaque is gone, so I don't know what that particular one is. All right, moving on to something totally different. If you follow us on marshallfredericks.net, you know that we have a blog, and we do some interesting things on there, and it all comes out of this room. It comes out of the archives. As well as, so those of you that don't know, we have marshallfredericks.org. You can follow us on our main website, and marshallfredericks.net. We've got a ton of wonderful virtual offerings right now, tours, virtual field trips, all kinds of fun stuff. But you might remember a little while ago, it wasn't that long, a couple weeks, we did a story about the two bears. So I found this book, this little book, I think that is written in Swedish or Norwegian, and it is from 1930, and there in the inside of this book, you could not get any more of a pose of the sculpture Two Bears than this little photo from 1930. I would have to assume, and then on the next page, there's the baby bear. So I would have to assume this was the photo that Marshall had in his mind when he created the sculpture of two bears. You can see he's sitting in that very relaxed pose. Everything about it is just from that piece. But so what we have here too, what I've laid out, is the story of what's behind some of these project files. Here we have the kind of the lineage of what took place. Okay, so Marshall Fredericks says, all right, I'm going to create this piece, and this particular sculpture was going to be for in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, for a shopping mall. And here is his original estimate. Obviously, he had an idea. Let's see what's going to cost me to have it created. And in 1964, this was going to cost $3,400 to have cast. And this is a big sculpture. This is almost 7 feet tall. So there is the first stage. Okay, so Marshall finds out, what is it going to cost me to do this thing? All right, then we move on to his letter. He writes a letter to the mall and says, okay, here's everything I know, and this is the contract. This piece is going to cost you $10,500 when it is finished. So nice little markup there. And then to complete the circle, we get the reply back from the mall in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, and they tell us, yes, we accept your offer of $10,500. Please deliver it to the Lincoln Square, Urbana, Illinois. Signed, and there you go. So from the little photo we had in this book to the actual kind of loose contract conversation that we have going on here between the buyer and the seller and the creator, and there we go. All right, let's move on. Couple of pictures that you don't get to see so often. Marshall in his military years, you know, dashing young man. But by the time he entered World War II, 1942, 43, he was already, you know, in his late 30s. So looks pretty good, held up pretty good. Better than a lot of people in those days. I'm going to turn this one sideways, sorry. But this is him and his wife, Rosalind, which he had just gotten married before he took off for World War II. And she was a beautiful woman, too, absolutely beautiful. And had two twin boys not too long after that picture. Here's another thing. I think this is one of the most fascinating things in this entire archives. This is a letter from the Cleveland School of Art, where Marshall Fredericks graduated from. This is to inform him of his award to take the traveling scholarship, which sent him to Europe to actually meet Carl Milles, his mentor. And this is his visiting scholarship award, May 29th, 1930. Shortly after that, he takes off and goes to Europe and travels around Europe and Scandinavia, northern parts of Africa. And he hones in on his new skills as an artist and sees the world. And he gets to go meet Carl Milles, all because of this. So that was a huge influence on his life. And this is the original letter that Marshall Fredericks received from that. Here's another fun thing. This is an article from the newspaper, and this is telling us the Memorial Mall due for completion in 1956, which would end up being the Cleveland War Memorial. And there's a picture of Marshall working on it. 1956. It would not be finished for 8 more years after that. So it was 1964 when this was finally finished. There's a whole bunch of wonderful newsprint articles that we have talking about when the completion date was going to be for this piece. Well, there was a little bit of a snag here and there. Marshall Fredericks had some problems with some ladies early on that didn't want nude sculpture in downtown Cleveland, so he had to rework it a little bit, and he got a little angry at them about this whole process. So for that reason, I don't know what other reasons there might have been, but it was held up for a little while, and eventually, in 1964, it was unveiled to the world. So wonderful piece. A couple other things. This is a great photograph. This is Marshall in his studio. Let me see if I can get up a little higher. Working on one of the saints and sinners. I believe this is the warrior saint. They are skinny already, but this was really skinny to start out with. And so he's got an assistant here working with him. Not sure. Marshall is just kind of looking on. He's got his pantograph in the background, which is used for scaling in his studio in Royal Oak. And the omnipresent rubber tree plant that he always had with him. A couple other things I think are really, really fun. All right, Marshall, when he was going to have this museum, he sat down and he created a virtual museum in these tiny little figures. This whole thing, each of these figures at most were maybe 3 inches tall, many of them probably 2 inches tall. But he laid the whole thing out. There's one photo. Here's another one that's kind of a top-down view. And it's the Christ on the cross, who was maybe 4 inches. That was one of the biggest pieces. But look at, there's the boy and bear, Spirit of Detroit, 2 bears, which we were just talking about. So he made all these, the saints and sinners, he made all these little mini figures to create a little virtual mock-up of the museum. Here's another really cool view looking in from what it might look like from the windows outside. Apparently there might have been some saints and sinners on the outside looking in at that particular time, but really, really cool piece. Great photographs. And we actually have the model, but it fell apart years ago, and we have the little figures are still around. So, one other thing. The last thing I decided to show you, because I think it is really exciting. You know, we have so much stuff in this museum that is of Marshall Fredericks, and we have a lot of things that are, we had an exhibition a couple years ago called Motor City Icon that was all about the Spirit of Detroit. Many of you might have seen it. So you saw all these little things that were used, the Spirit of Detroit was used as the image to create all kinds of different things. Magnets, postcards, artwork, t-shirts, letterhead, you name it. Wallets, bottles for alcohol, for beer, for wine, for vodka, we've had it all. The Spirit of Detroit is that popular. But a few years ago, we had a guy, and I'm going to butcher his name. It was Sergei Pakhamov. He was an artist from Russia. And he had called the museum, and I had picked up the phone, and I talked to him, and he had said, hey, I didn't, you know, you're kind of good English, but not great. He was coming to the United States. He was going to go to Hamtramck for an art exhibition. I'm like, all right, cool. I created a Spirit of Detroit. Would you like to see it? Cool, you know, all right, see what your inspiration is. Well, come to find out, Sergei works exclusively in his particular medium. He's not a painter, he's not a sculptor, well, he's a sculptor, but he works with pasta. So he takes different types of pasta, puts them together to create these really, really fun pieces. And this is what he showed us, that he brought and gave us. This is the Spirit of Detroit made out of pasta. Now, the little little energy kind of things that come off of the orb are actually in here. I didn't put them on, but they actually do fit. So he has the little rays that come off of the Spirit of Detroit's orb. But how cool is this? So this is something else we keep in our archives, you know, pasta Spirit of Detroit. It's not very tall. It's maybe 4 inches tall, but think about it. You know, during this downturn of isolation, and you're thinking of something to do, just go buy a few different types of pasta and some glue and have some fun. Make something out of it. So that is kind of a cool, inventive thing. Great artist. If you look him up, he does some amazing work too. So that is about it. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll do this again maybe sometime when we have the time to pull out some other things and show you. But I just want you to know that if you are a visitor or a guest that comes to the museum, you can certainly feel free to come knock on the door, say, hey, you know, Jeff, can I take a little tour of the archives? And I'd be happy to show you, because there's so much great stuff in here, and it should be able to be seen on occasion to the public. So this, to me, is the brain center of the museum. This is everything. This is Marshall's life encapsulated in one room. Outside of his art, those are his ideas, his thoughts, the images, the film. This is the life of one of the greatest artists and the greatest public sculptor in the United States, for sure. So, if anybody has any questions about this, I will answer them a little later. Feel free to leave them. And thank you for joining me today. It's a miserable, rainy day outside, so stay dry. And I hope to see you again. Stay safe and have a great day.